Okay, you guys, here I am, Suzanne Tidkemeyer, No Longer Quivering. I wrote No Longer Quivering for Pathos for almost 10 years and for a year before that. So, I want to explain a little bit about fundamentalist religions today. This keeps cropping up again and again and again. You know, the naughty C word we're not supposed to say here on YouTube. And I'm not talking about the beer virus, that's another C word. And I'm not talking about something you call a lady that you may not like. Yes, I'm all wet. I got out of the shower. I'm talking about the bite model thing. Hey, Bliss. Hey, small town Jewel. I'm doing pretty well. I don't know how you guys are doing, but I'm doing pretty well. I just got a headache from hell, but I think it's because I didn't sleep much last night. The cat. She tends to just bug the crap out of me sometimes, and last night was that. So I probably slept very little. Hey, Nash, dog mom. So anyway, I'm going to talk about the bite model and what a C leader actually is, somebody who's in control, because there are a lot of churches that fall under that. If you look at Steven Hassan's bite model of authoritarian control, there are 4 different areas: behavior control, information control, thought control, and emotional control. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that and how that relates to theology, and sometimes out of theology, because I have known, well, I'm watching somebody calling somebody else that they don't like, or in illegal snafus with them, calling him a cult leader. Oh, God, I said the word. Okay, that's what they've been calling him. And it's not true. If you look at the bite model, then you would say that your traditional leader of the C word would be somebody like Jim Jones, pops up number 1 on the list, Charles Manson, people that have massive followings and do really, really horrible things mostly. Hitler was kind of a cult leader. Marshall Applewhite definitely was. If you don't know who Applewhite is, Applewhite had his own little weird little group. Hey, Ginger Lee. Oh, I hope you're feeling better with that. That's crazy. Okay, so Marshall Applewhite is perfect example of the C word. He had a group that thought that the Hale-Bopp comet was some kind of sign that they were going to join the aliens. They had some kind of really bizarre belief system that he ran, and he controlled everything about them. He controls when they ate. He controls what they thought, what they engaged in as far as like the culture. He taught them this toxic, self-serving theology, and then he had to mix up applesauce with barbiturates. Everybody in the group took it, lay down on their bunks in their Nike shoes, their sweats, with a rolling nickels in their pockets. Was it nickels or quarters? Now, I don't know if they thought they were going to a giant celestial gambling facility in the sky where they would have an opportunity to use their coins, but they were all found in the house right down to him, and massive death. Eventually, either the cult falls apart or somebody dies. I've seen this happen a number of times. Heaven's Gate. Yeah, they are really strange, Bliss. I remember when that happened. I remember reading quite a bit about it, thinking that has got to be the weirdest theology sort of thing I've seen in a long time. And at the time, I was fully immersed in my own little high-demand religious group. Okay, so let's break down the bite model and the different things. Behavior control. Regulate an individual's physical reality. Dictate where, how, and with whom the member lives and associates or isolates. When, how, and with whom the members to have sex. Okay. Control types of clothing and hairstyles, regulate diet, manipulation, and deprivation of sleep. Sleep deprivation is extremely common when you have these types of groups. They will keep you up for hours, days, trying to get you to. And if you are up for days, you know what happens? Your brain power slips. It really does. I feel really dull and leaden today because I didn't get enough sleep. So what happens? Your reaction time slow down. You have difficulty in thinking process. They say it's just as bad to be sleep deprived as it is to be drunk to get behind a wheel. And I really believe that. A lot of these people, they use sleep deprivation to force you to accept their twisted theologies. Small town Julie, yes, that's really popular in a lot of these groups. Charles Manson used to have these huge orgies, okay? And he would direct them. He would tell who was going to sleep with whom. He would outline what sexual activity they were going to participate in, all of that. Now, I believe that I read that Heaven's Gate everybody was supposed to be celibate. So that's another controlling of somebody's sex life, and that's never it's never a good thing. Going back to my list, where is it? Financial exploitation, manipulation, or dependence restricts leisure, entertainment, vacation time. Major time spent with group indoctrination and rituals and/or self-indoctrination, including the internet. Well, I have to say, I haven't seen very many of the C word that actually took place online. Now, I've seen them spread their messages online. I mean, even Heaven Gate had a huge website that they had up for a long, long time. And then you have some people that I consider more of a modern Christian C word, like the Pearls, Bill Gothard. And you see there the financial plays in. Everybody has to give the cult leader money, have to rubber stamp whatever he's doing. And that can lead to some really, really bizarre things. Permission required for major decisions, rewards and punishments used to modify behaviors, both positive and negative. I can tell you from my old church, my own personal experience, that if you did something that ran counter to the things that our pastor thought up, you would get called on the carpet. I got called on the carpet a number of times for things that I did, stupid things that would not necessarily Koresh, yes, you're right. Didn't allow any men to have sex. He made the men give up their wives to him. That's it, right. Yeah, they were blessed. They had the first ones with a website. So they still have a few little members. Oh, so there's that. Go back to the stupid list. Discourage individualism, encourage groupthink. That's probably one of the more important ones. Impose rigid rules and regulations. Now, this one they did not do. I know with this. Punish disobedience by beating, torture, burning, cutting, the R word, or tattooing and branding. That is some of the more out there ones. Threaten harm to the family and friends. That's pretty common. Force an individual to do the R word or be the R word. Encourage and engage in corporal punishment. Michael Pearl, baby. Instill dependence and obedience. Kidnapping, beating, torture, the R word, separation of families, imprisonment, and murder. So that really goes well beyond controlling somebody's physical being and say who they can have sex with and what they're going to eat. That goes into dangerous physical control as far as I'm concerned. I think they need to break that down even further. So then the next one that they talk about is information control. And I'm not going to read every one of these things because there's simpler explanations for that one. Basically, they tell you, and we've seen this with some of the news organizations on both sides, I'm just going to say, they tell you exactly what they want you to think, regardless of if it lines up with the real truth or not. They give you all your information. They disparage any information that does not line up with them by saying it's false. We saw a lot of that in one of the campaigns where somebody was saying fake news. And not only do they control the information, they'll set you to spy on each other and encourage tattletaling, encourage you to rat out your fellow member, and push the idea that they don't push the idea that I've heard with prison, snitches get stitches. Not in the C word. And those high demand religious organizations, not at all. The third one is thought control, which really I think almost could have fit information control. Require members to internalize the group's doctrine as truth. That is a big one. A lot of times they'll change your name. They use coded language to keep you thinking what they want you to think. They try to control your every thought. If you express any dissension or say, hey, I'm thinking about X, Y, or Z, they'll say, oh my goodness, stop that. You can't be thinking about those things. Thinking about those things is unbelief. I got told that one quite a bit when I would ask questions, because I'm always going to ask questions. As someone just found out, I'm always going to ask 5 trillion questions. So there's the thought control can be really insidious to get rid of too once you've been through these types of things, because it really plays into who you are as a person. It replaces a lot of your core beliefs and values and thinking. It's really hard to kill. So I think that's the hardest one of the 4 to get rid of after you leave. Emotional control, which could fit under thought control too. Manipulate and narrow the range of feelings. We see that in fundamentalism and in quiverful and in evangelicalism when they tell you to just think happy thoughts. When they start claiming that depression, which is many times is a chemical imbalance in the body, when they start saying that they can heal depression if you just start thinking positive thoughts, don't walk away from the people. Run. So they will label a lot of emotions problematic and encourage you not to ever have them. Not even to express them, but don't have them in the first place. Think happy thoughts. Now, I will say, as a natural sarcastic pessimist, I have found that when I get in these ruts with this, especially with this old theology, to stop and think something positive or respond with something positive is really one of the best things you can do. You just shut a lot of things down. I do it a lot at night when I'm trying to sleep, and my mind is saying, oh my gosh, what about this relative losing their house in Ida? What about this? What if a plane crashes, since I live near an airport, on your property? I mean, I have these weird, and I will wake up sometimes with anxiety thoughts, and you have to put those to death. But those are the sort of things they teach you to deny, or at least pretend you don't have them. Pretend you don't have them. Think happy thoughts. They are big on that. And all they do is cause people to bottle up their emotions. And when they do that, it comes out some weird ways. You deny a part of your personality, a part of who you are, it's going to come out in some strange, toxic way. Just look at Josh Duggar, not allowed to express any sexuality as a teen, and what happened to him and where he is now. Yes, my treatment, resistant depression, wants positive thoughts. Jenna, that never works for anybody. I said before, my husband had that, and it turned out he had a parathyroid gland that was pumping massive amounts of calcium into his bloodstream. It was causing kidney stones. It was causing stones, bones, groans, psych overtones. So once the parathyroid gland was removed, the majority of it, leaving a little bit behind, that stopped. His was chemical, and the whole time he'd been going to church, they said it was not chemical. They said that it was he didn't trust Jesus enough and think happy thoughts. No amount of thinking happy thoughts would have helped that. If he hadn't had it removed, he would have eventually died. It is toxic positivity, and Heidi, I get mad when people do that to people with chronic illnesses like myself. One day I had a friend, and I know he meant well. He posted on my Facebook page a toxic positivity meme about chronic ailments, basically saying deny it, push through, do everything you can do. And I had to take that and completely rewrite it and offer almost opposite solutions. Things like snap a smile on your face and get dressed and go out, even if you feel horrible. So you don't owe anybody emotions. You don't owe them positive, negative, anything emotion. You don't owe anybody anything about your emotions. Your emotions are yours. If you're having a bad day, there's nothing wrong with taking a day off. There really isn't. So there's that. In his trust Jesus, take your supplements, think happy thoughts, all of that. So, got to go back. Teach motion stopping techniques to block feelings of helplessness, anger, homesickness, and doubt. That's true. They'll teach you that. And in the churches, they tell you to focus on Jesus. Make the person feel that problems are always their own fault, never the leader's or the group's fault. Now, I've struggled with that, having been raised Catholic in Catholic school. You pick up that guilt. A Jewish friend of mine used to say, the Jews own the guilt, the Catholics rent it. And there's a lot of truth to that statement. It's always made me laugh when I've thought about that. Well, I'm glad that worked for you, Jenna. Allow yourself to lick your wounds. Sometimes you have to do that to heal. If you just push it down, push it down, push it down, push it down, and deny it, you're not doing yourself any favors. It's going to come out. It'll come out in some weird ways. So it talks about promoting the fear and the guilt. Social guilt, historical guilt, your past guilt, that your family is deficit, various things like that. They will push that. And still fear, that's the big one. And we're talking about fear of just about everything while screaming that you have no fear, that your God or whatever, your cult leader, your God is completely 100% in control, and you have turned over your all your stuff. It's like that old song we used to sing in church. I'm trading my sorrows, laying them down for the joy of the Lord. So they will teach you that stuff there. The bad thing is that some of the people are in very low situations, that thinking happy thoughts would be to not be here anymore. I know that. That's what disturbs me the most. When people are depressed, they don't need to know that, but they don't need to be filled with those happy thoughts, because their happy thought may be of ending it all, and that's not a happy thought. Even though I have to say, from having been tempted myself a few times, I was going through some really rough parts of my life without much help, this actually feels good to think of that thought, whether you decide to act on it or not. If you're in so much pain that death is actually preferable. It's really hard to turn that off once you go to that place. And that's one thing about the C words. They do have a lot of suicides and things, I think, the ones that I've known. Ritualistic and sometimes public confessions of sin. Oh, we used to have that one in my old church all the time. I remember one time we had a Neil T. Anderson study. I think it was called The Bondage Breakers, the book was. And it came with this yellow and purple booklet we had to fill out. I found mine before I moved here and just laughed at all of it because it was all fear-led. One of the things was you had to renounce being baptized in urine in the name of Satan. Is that even really a thing? I mean, there's this whole half page and more on the other page about the whole satanic rituals thing. And I don't know anybody who's ever been to a satanic ritual. Not even people that aren't very religious. I don't know anybody who has. But they wanted to make you write down and confess all your sins. And then we would have a meeting where we would read ours aloud and talk and discuss. One of the ones, because I remember this, because for me, this was one of the times that I thought about leaving the church. It was really the beginning of me pulling the thread off the tapestry to start unraveling the whole thing for me, because one of the things they had listed was yoga, and I had done yoga for years. Now, at that point in my life, I wasn't actively doing yoga, but I had done it. I did it when I had backaches, I would do the back poses that help. I had a complete hysterectomy, and one of the things that I did was laying in the bed and was kind of prompted to do the yoga poses I could do in the bed that help speed up your digestion, because as you all know, when you have a major abdominal surgery, they're not going to let you go home until you can prove you can have a bowel movement. And the only way to start achieving that is to start activating your digestive tract. And if you can do that with a few yoga poses. So I have been, Noelle. So I asked why yoga was on that list with Roddy and a few other things that I thought were relatively harmless. And I was told because you have to chant demons' names. I knew that was a damn lie. I went home and I had a yoga book by this lady that taught it on PBS for years and years, Lilias Yoga and You book. I had that thing for years and years. It was yellowed and falling apart. So I went home and I pulled my yoga book off the shelf. And the very beginning, she said, I dedicate this to Jesus Christ, our Lord and Savior. It's like, nobody's chanting demon names in this stuff. So I just kind of quietly ignored that. And like I said, that was the first big thread that came out for me. You know, there were so many times when people expressed extremely ignorant views of everything, and I would just think to myself, not to challenge them because they weren't very educated, they could barely read, and I was just going to let them think that. Which was pretty cowardly line of me to do that. I should have educated a few people. Small Town Jewel, there's a couple of yoga poses that do help. I'll have to look them up and send them to you, but there are a couple that help. They help. If you're trying to get your digestive tract moving, there are a couple that will help. Well, they certainly can't harm, let's put it that way. Oh, Jenna, that is so not true. That makes me crazy when people say that. I've dealt with that in my old church too. And so there is that. That's awful. I do remember the show, Noelle. That's what I was talking about. I was talking about Lilias Yoga because she had that show for years and years on PBS. Somewhere I had a set of the DVDs later for yoga. And I had to go back to her because the yoga DVDs I had, the poses and what they were doing it real fast. They were doing too hard for me. And I just could not. She was more gentle and it was more slow paced. I tend to move like a sloth, even when I'm feeling well. I don't like falling down. So there's that. I figure yoga can't hurt. I should probably go back to it. The last 3 or 4 years before I left Virginia, I did water yoga at our at the, I gotta think of the name of the place. It was a health center connected to the hospital. They had physical therapy and things like that on one side, and the other side was a regular gym. And I used to go to the regular gym all the time. That was one of my fun things to do. Let me go back to this thing. Phobia indoctrination, inculcating irrational fears about leaving a group or questioning the leader's authority, claiming there is no happiness or fulfillment possible outside of the group, promising you terrible consequences if you leave, demon possession, incurable diabetes, accidents, suicide, insanity, 10,000 reincarnations, et cetera, et cetera. Dealt with that one too, shaming those who leave, saying there's never a legitimate reason to leave, but those who leave are weak, worldly, unspiritual, brainwashed, or seduced by money, sex, or rock and roll. Threats of harm to ex-member and family. Well, I dealt with that one too, not the threats of harm to family or yourself, but the inculcation to just be part of the church group. And when I left, like I said, my husband didn't experience even a fraction of what I did. I had people coming after me. I'd walk down the street. I remember one time being in my little Virginia town, downtown, parked and was going to go to the art studio I worked at sometimes. And I ran into a former member of another church who immediately started yelling at me about being an apostate and all the stuff I'd done wrong. And I was just like, talk to the hand. Like I said, I had to develop a strategy for dealing with this. The best strategy is to ask questions like Jesus did. Like if somebody runs up and says, I heard you're an apostate now and you don't believe and blah, blah, blah. Oh, says, well, why would you say that? Who told you that? And then just go on, and each statement they make say, well, Pastor so-and-so said that to me. I wonder how he knew. He's not part of our church. So, well, he heard it from your pastor. Oh, you mean my ex-pastor? Are you sure? Because it sounds to me like this is coming through multiple, maybe not so good sources. So you just go on and throw, therapy pool is relaxing, you're right. Just go ahead and throw questions at them that they can't answer. And eventually they'll shut up and go away, very chastened with their tail between their legs like a whipped dog. And I don't like the idea of whipped dogs, except when it's people that are acting like that. Rock and roll. Yes, rock and roll is the thing they always push, is like this huge window of Satan. And then they would come up with Christian rock groups. Oh, what was the one my daughter used to obsess over? She loved them so much. I wish I could remember the name. Anyway, she liked them. She also liked this guy hit that was flip-flops not on the ground or something like that. He was like a Christian rapper, a white rapper, and supposedly rapped Dear Kanye or something. One of the popular black rappers. He was trying to establish some kind of communication with. So it was downright comical. So many churches think divorce is inexcusable, even if there was infidelity, and so many are in awful relationships. Jenna, that is absolutely true. I think that's why women pull their families into quiverful, because they're promised that God will fix their man if they are just submissive enough, sweet enough, praying enough, reading their Bible enough, doing all the good Christian gal things good enough, then God will reward them by healing or changing their husbands. And I've never seen that actually work in those churches. What I did see was a bunch of petty, thin-skinned tyrants and dictators. I saw a lot of that. I told the story the other day about the guy in our church that forced his wife, who had MS and could barely walk, to go out at midnight while it was snowing to get him one topping for his hot fudge sundae he wanted. I think it was not a hot fudge sundae. I can't remember if it was a banana split or a sundae, but he said he pushed her out the door very cruelly and said, "You will do this." And I said to my husband later, I said, "I didn't like that one bit. And I think that's wrong. That's wrong. That's wrong." And he went into his song and dance. But that's their relationship. That's how they choose to run their relationship. Who are we to judge? I tell you, I'm judging. Anybody that's cruel to someone else, particularly somebody who's struggling with that kind of illness, earns automatic dislike from me. That's just damn cruel. It was one stupid thing. It was wet nuts. And he's tried to divorce her a couple of times, too, and he hasn't been successful. I'm really surprised they're still together after all this time. After 30 plus years, they're still together, and I'm just like shaking my head going, how did this happen? How did they stay together? Because he used to routinely leave her. So there is that. There is that. So you'll see a lot of that in some of these churches. Something that really bothers me is these Christians come up to you, run their mouths about how awful you are. How does that show they're Christian or to believe what they want you to? They have it backwards. They don't understand. They don't understand Jesus at all. I mean, if you go back and you read the Gospels of Jesus, he wasn't doing that stuff. He was hanging around with tax collectors and prostitutes and people of low estate. He wasn't hanging out with with his chick tracts trying to convince anybody. He was hanging out with normal folks. He had no use for the Pharisees, the very publicly religious people of his day. And I look at people who do that stuff now, and I think they're Pharisees that don't even know who Jesus is. My in-laws told me if I had the sports package channels on cable, my ex-husband wouldn't have to go to the bars to cheat. Idiots. Yeah, I agree with you there, Jenna. You know, a man who's going to cheat no matter what you say or do. That's a problem I have with Lori Alexander and Nancy Campbell and some of the other women of Quiverful. They teach that if you are good enough, if you are submissive enough, you smile enough, you're pleasant enough, you give sex every single time, that your man will not stray. Somebody that has that in their mind, they're going to stray. They're going to stray, even if they have to find stupid ways to do it. You're supposed to show the love of Christ in your thought, your actions. Yeah, you are supposed to. You're supposed to love other people and meet them where they are. And if you have somebody in front of you that's really, you consider them sinful, you're not to treat them awful. No, well, it's got to be an awful, terrible, miserable way to live. And I think that's why so many of these women try to become influencers now, because they're incredibly miserable and they spread their misery to other people. I see a lot of that. And men can do no wrong. They're always excused. Toxic patriarchy. That is exactly right. And since women are considered less than men, that means in toxic patriarchy, women have to put up whatever the man says. Even if he's pushing you out the door at midnight with your crutches to go get him wet nuts. That's what he wanted, was a jar of wet nuts, I recall now. Mr. Wet Nuts. And so the thing is, when they do wrong, they can't be disciplined. The same person tried to cheat on his wife, and he gave me as his excuse for where he was when he was actually with the girlfriend. The girlfriend gave her husband that same excuse. Well, later, both the husband and the wife asked me and said, "How did you enjoy that Van Gogh exhibit?" I was like, "What? I don't know what you're talking about." Back then, the Smithsonian had an exhibit of Van Gogh. And everybody who knows me knows I love Van Gogh. You can look, I have quilts and various Van Gogh fabrics. I have a painting I did over my bed in the style of Vincent. I absolutely adore his paintings. I like his style. So everybody knew that. So they each told their spouses they were with me going to the Van Gogh exhibit for the weekend at the Smithsonian, staying overnight in DC. We weren't that far from DC. My husband commuted every single day. So I was totally acluistic when the husband and the wife asked me about it. I had to say, "I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know who told you that I was with your spouse at the Van Gogh exhibit, but it's not true." So when he was caught doing this, it was a pretty big thing. And our pastor told him he had to leave until he came to his senses and went back to his wife. And what he said was, "No pastor is going to tell me what to do." He was not repentant at all. He said that he believed he was perfectly right to cheat because his wife had health issues and he no longer loved her as a result. So he felt perfectly justified and told the pastor he was wrong. That's what happens with these patriarchy guys. They don't learn how to behave or treat women. Then the little boys learn, and it's a miracle when they change. It is a miracle. It's so sad for men. You're right, Noelle. I would have to be at the end all of everything. Oh my goodness, that would not be good. You should do a deep dive into Chad Dable's belief system one day. I have read quite a bit about him, Small Town Jewel, and I may have to do that. I'm going to do also a Larry Solomon deep dive because Larry is one of the toxic ones. And Larry is pretty crazy. Another thing I'm going to do, starting tomorrow, I'm going to start doing some book reviews of some of the books that have come out of this. Some of the books that these guys write are crazy, crazy. I think I'm going to focus on the writings of one Doug Wilson. He has written a romance novel that was cringingly bad, but it was his recent novel he wrote called Rod, Sally, Rod that was a true masterpiece and just awfulness. The writing was bad, the scenarios were contrived, and he used every kind of fear-mongering, button-pushing BS that you could come up with to promote it. All of his actions was written by a 12-year-old with revenge fantasies. It was just crazy, and it involves a sex robot named Sally. And the interesting thing about Sally is Sally only spoke in come-ons like harder, big boy, and stuff like that. It would say again, and just stupid things. No independent thought, no sentient being. But in this world that Doug wrote, this liberal world, they brought charges against the kid that ran the robot through the metal compactor. I laughed so hard over that stupid thing. Noelle, the book club is something that Do Good Letters is doing. They're doing House of the Seven Gables, the first 4 chapters. I am going to participate with that because I love to read, and it's been so long since I read that book. I have very faint memories of it. I think I must have read it back in high school, that, and along with Great Expectations, a lot of Shakespeare and things like that. So tomorrow, ick Larry. Larry is awful. Larry's he's a special case. And when somebody slipped me his real info, his name and everything, and I went and took a look on Facebook, I'm just going to tell you right now, Larry makes out that he's big and bad, and all that. Larry's just an average, dumpy, plump, balding, middle-aged man. There's nothing there that I could see that would attract anyone. So I would say that Larry's scenarios that he writes up are pure fiction. You going to read along, Noelle? I am too. I'm going to try to participate too. I used to love book club, so here goes nothing. So I have to talk about a little bit about that letter yesterday. I read Tara Westover's book. It was called was it Educated? I read that book. It was pretty horrifying because it took place in an extremely fundamentalist world. Fundamentalist Mormons, apparently her family was, and they had a whole lot of crazy going on there. So that was a good book too. Right now I'm reading the one, I can't think of the name of the movie. A movie was based upon, and laughing because it's semi-comical and awful. Well, the book's not awful, just some of the ideas in it just make me laugh in their badness. So tomorrow we're going to talk about Doug Wilson's book. We're going to talk about Ride Sally Ride and the robot mashing that took place. I have some screen caps I'm going to have to look up that I did of the robot and the smashed robot and all that. And I got to pull up my notes because I had taken copious notes and written copious words about that book because there was so much, it just made no sense at all in it. Okay, and I want to talk a little bit about the letter, well, the email I got yesterday, and I got a new one today. I'm not going to comply. No one tells me that I can't talk to Steve McRae, who's a friend of mine. So I'm going to continue to talk to Steve McRae. I'm not going to delete anything, even though because it's not an official order of spoliation that's been filed with the courts. It's what they sent me is not legal here, so I'm just going to ignore. And I had said yesterday I was no longer going to talk about Without a Box of Kleenex. I'm going to stick to that. Now, when the Chrisley suit starts, I'll probably will again, and maybe even over the Steve one. But it's just gotten ridiculous. Oh, the email said that they were ordering me not to destroy any correspondence between Steve McRae and myself, or any correspondence between Katie Joy and myself. I have a couple of screen caps I've done from my last conversation with her, but the remainder of my conversations with her, she has deleted all of them. So she's deleted all of that. So that's on her. And the letter said that none of us were to speak on Katie Joy at all. We weren't able to do YouTube videos on her. That if we did, there would be tremendous civil fines levied. Minnesota court has no jurisdiction in Costa Rica, you doof. I told you that. If you want me to shut up, you're going to have to actually file with the courts and get a court order. If you do that, then yeah, but I'm not going to delete anything. My conversations with Steve have nothing to do with anything, and that's the reason. Noelle, you can send letters through email, and that's what this was a letter, an unofficial letter. That's what this was a letter, an unofficial letter. Now, I answered him and told him I'm in Costa Rica. I'm not bound by this, and he responded very bad back. And it sounded like I was talking to KJ, not a lawyer. It was very petty and vile. So there is that. You know, Roadhog said he's going to his lawyer on Tuesday and see if it's even legal to send these threats to the email, that it may be some type of threatening. We may be able to file all on her for what she did with these letters, because they were just ridiculous. Like I said, no one stops me from talking to my friends. I'm going to keep talking to Steve. I'm not talking about him to you, sweetheart, so you can just calm yourself down and sit down. But I'm not complying with that. I will continue to talk to him and anybody else as I damn well please, and I will go ahead and do YouTube videos as I damn well please. I have contacted YouTube's legal department. I've sent them all these threats that I've gotten, and I would encourage any creator that is getting threatening emails from the legal team where the guy does elder law and wills and real estate, not internet, to go ahead and report it. Report it to YouTube that a YouTube creator is threatening the rest of us creators, threatening everyone else. Yeah, I don't think it's legal. It's does she really think everyone dislikes her because of Steve? Yes. She really thinks that Steve is some kind of Svengali, some kind of controlling leader in a high demand organization. And she thinks we're all members, all of the other creators. No such thing. There's no such thing at all. So I'm kind of curious to see how this all plays out. I'm not going to delete anything. I'm not doing that anyway. She did that when she got an official spoliation, which had been signed off by the courts telling her not to delete anything. She's gotten 2 of those, one in the Teddy Westbrook lawsuit and one in the Steve McRae, well, one in the one from Todd Chrisley. And the first thing she did was lock up and delete a bunch of stuff. I'm not doing that. Yeah. We all got the same letter. We got the same letter with very slight variations. No decent lawyer would do that kind of crap. It's just ridiculous. This is another one of her I'm cutting corners by doing it this way schemes, I think. And it's not going to work on me. She can just take that flying leap at a rolling donut as far as I'm concerned. I will do and say what I want. And that led me to talk about leaders in these high demand organizations, because all the things I read you, they definitely don't fit Steve. They don't fit Steve. They fit a whole lot of Christian pastors that I know, but they don't fit Steve. They don't fit me. They don't fit a lot of people. So there it is. So I'm waiting to see what happens with Roadhog, because he's talking about suing. And if there's basis, I think we all should do it. We should all claim that we're being threatened, because it is threatening. KJ wants to talk about everybody else, but she doesn't want anybody talking about her, and that kind of is not exactly fair. She's claiming to be a internet influencer, a celebrity, a minor celebrity, and then sometimes she claims to be a private person, so you can't really have it both ways. The threats versus the letter don't match. Well, yeah, you're right. And I've only talked to Steve mostly on Twitter. So if she wants to see that stuff, she needs to just go ahead and go ahead and send out a request through a judge, an order to get my entire Twitter download with Steve. You can do that. There's nothing there. There's nothing about any high demand religious organization that he's the mob boss of. There's none of that. So what she's asking for is not going to even help her case. So whatever, which is my response to her attorney. I'm not going to respond to him any longer. I blocked him. Dude, you got to sue me and serve me in my hand with the paper to make comply. I've said it several times now. I'm saying it again. Oh, make her spend some more money on legal fees. That's always fun. It makes me laugh that I know she spent money doing this thing. She's going to spend her entire fortune on lawyers sifting through nothing. That's exactly right, Noelle. And I don't think she has a fortune. I don't think she has much. Todd Chrisley has looked up her assets, and he says there's nothing there except for the YouTube channel. Who knows? That reminds me, I got to send these off to Todd so that he can see what's going on with this nonsense. So there's, yeah, very interesting. I think people think too much of themselves. They really do, and it's actually kind of funny. Every time I start thinking I'm the bomb, reality throws me a reality check. I suck as much as everybody else. I really appreciate Aaron's EKC people suck, because we all do suck at times. It's just human nature. Everybody has biases. Everybody comes at things from different angles. And none of us are right 100% of the time. And the sooner you accept that and move on, the better off you are. It's only narcissists that think that they're perfect and think that everybody else is flawed. Noelle, I hope so too. I know she's not going to do anything. So I'm just going to ignore it now, because she's had her little September surprise, and it was a little surprising, but it wasn't awful surprising. It was like, yeah, I kind of expected something like this eventually. What can you say? It's Katie Joy. So I'm going to leave you to enjoy the rest of your Saturday afternoon. I've talked for almost an hour now, and my throat is starting to go. My voice is going. Tomorrow, bad book reviews. I've wanted to, for a long time, to do a book review site for fundamentalist type books and call it handbaskets to hell. Because so many times I've been threatened by fundamentalists, by evangelicals, by Christians, that I'm going to hell in a handbasket. Well, sweetheart, I have my basket already decorated. I have pillows and candles and snacks and fun stuff, because I want to be comfortable if I'm going to hell. So he just posted a video. I'm going to have to go and do it then. Love you guys. Have a great afternoon.